Welcome back, everybody. Eric and Geoff with you as always to break down what's going down in MMA. This time we're going to be breaking down UFC 144 going on at the Saitama Super Arena in Saitama, Japan. It's going to be pretty awesome. Geoff, what's going on?
Well, before we get started on our UFC 144 predictions, Eric, we'd like to say that this is our 1-year anniversary show. Our first show we ever did was back in February of 2011. We predicted UFC 127, and ever since then, we've grown in popularity from getting green screen, from getting professional lighting and better cameras, to getting shout-outs from UFC fighters. Thanks, Chael Sonnen. We've had a lot of great experiences, obviously, over the year, and obviously we're hoping for better experiences in the future. I'm excited for what's to come. We're going to be breaking down, obviously, UFC 144, which Eric said was in Saitama, Japan. First time the UFC is back in Japan since the year 2000, and the first time the UFC is in Japan under Zuffa ownership. We're going to be breaking down the 4 fights on the pay-per-view card. We're going to be mentioning a few things. Obviously, on the prelims, you have Tim Bosch versus Yushin Okami. You have Mark Hunt versus Czech Congo. But on the pay-per-view docket, we're going to start off strong with Anthony Showtime Pettis, Eric, versus Joe Lozon. How do you see that going down?
You know, a lot of people are really excited for this fight for various reasons. Both relatively young fighters. Anthony Pettis is a little more inexperienced. He's sporting a record of 12-2 coming from the WEC, whereas Joe Luzon, you know, Ultimate Fighter, you know, was on the show, trained with BJ Penn for a while and whatnot, so he's a little more experienced with a record of 20-6. You know, interesting thing, both these guys actually are the same height. They're both 5'10". They are both purple belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Interesting thing, though, I mean, some people think it's interesting, some people don't think it's really that important, but Anthony Pettis is a third-degree black belt in Taekwondo. Also, he does train with Duke Rufus at Rufus Sports, which is considered a really good camp out there. You know, and I think it's no secret in this fight, really, that Joe Luzon is looking to take this fight down to the ground and looking to submit Anthony Pettis, whereas, you know, Anthony Pettis most likely is going to try to use his striking to either get a knockout or get a decision win.
I agree in part, but I also believe that Joe Lozon actually has very good boxing, very underrated. Melvin Gillard, who everyone was talking about, was going to be knocking on a door for #1 contender status at the lightweight division. Joe Lozon was a 4-1 underdog against Melvin Gillard, and yet he rocks him right away in the first round with a stiff jab, takes his back, chokes him out. Joe Lozon's here to stay. He's had some tough fights. Obviously, he had his loss against George Soteropoulos, but then again, that's nothing to wave your nose at. There's nothing to ignore. I mean, George Soteropoulos is a tough guy at 155. He's had some good fights. Obviously, he's got great jiu-jitsu. I believe Anthony Pettis has great jiu-jitsu also. Obviously, Anthony Pettis became famous for that Showtime kick off the fence, kicking Ben Henderson in the face, and he became famous. That was like a highlight reel around the world. But I believe this fight will be very interesting. I think it will be actually pretty closer than a lot of people the odds makers might say. Yeah. I think I'll probably give the edge to Joe Lozon just because he's got this boxing, and if it does go to the ground, he's actually probably more experienced on the ground than Anthony Pettis. It's not taking anything away from him. Anthony Pettis, a former WEC lightweight champion, you know, he's obviously good, but obviously he doesn't have the wrestling, and I think that will be the difference in this fight. All right, now moving up the pay-per-view card, we have Jake Shields, who has a 2-fight losing streak, taking on Yoshihiro Akiyama, who's on a 3-fight losing streak. Eric, how do you see that going down?
You know, personally, I've said it once, I'll say it again. I think Yoshihiro Akiyama has not won a single fight in the UFC. He's on a 3-fight losing streak, I believe. And also, I do believe that he did lose to Alan Belcher at UFC 100. Given that, though, you know, his record right now is 13-4. He's taken on, of course, Jake Shields, who's 26-6, more experience, taking on some really good veterans. This is Akiyama's first fight at welterweight. Akiyama is known for his stand-up striking and judo. I believe the only reason he's still in the UFC is he did have a lot of fight of the nights. You know, he does put on a good show. A thing about Jake Shields, though, man, is a lot of people know Jake Shields is one of very few Cesar Gracie black belts. He is also an All-American wrestler. And I think he's really gonna take it to Akiyama on this one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think Jake Shields having superior grappling, obviously with his jiu-jitsu, will probably control Akiyama on the ground. And we've seen Akiyama have cardio issues before. I think Jake Shields can go 5 rounds. He did against George St. Pierre. He took more out of GSP than GSP took out of him. He lost to Jake Ellenberger, but you know he's gonna come strong. Obviously, Akiyama is gonna be fighting in Japan, his homeland, try to represent the Japanese people. So he's obviously gonna be motivated. I believe it's the same with with Brazilians. When they fight in Brazil, they put on some of the best fights. So I think Akiyama can save his job with a win. But I think if he loses, I think the UFC just needs to cut him, to be honest, because and he hasn't really been being that he's not that impressive. I mean, the dude really can't take a shot either. I mean, he gets rocked a few times on the feet, and it's like you're known for good striking, but yet you get rocked over and over. So I don't want to see a brawl. I think Jake Shields is going to play it smart. He's got the better wrestling. He's going to take it down to the ground, probably control Akiyama and submit him possibly first, second round. So that's what I think is going to happen.
Yeah. Now, for the co-main event of the evening, we do have Quinton Rampage Jackson taking on Ryan Darth Vader. Geoff, how do you see this one going down?
Well, it's Ryan Darth Bader, not Darth Vader. Let's not get confused right now. Anyways, Rampage Jackson is coming off of a loss to John Bones Jones. Fourth round, rear naked choke. Rampage has never been finished in the UFC before, so obviously John Jones finishing him wasn't much to complain about. John Jones is one of the best in the world for a reason. And Darth Bader, is coming off of a win over Jason Brills, but before that he was coming off of a 2-fight losing streak. A fight where he fought Tito Ortiz, where he was a big favorite and got choked out in the first round, and a fight before that he fought John Jones and got choked out in the second round. Then again, they both share some of the same opponents. But I believe Rampage, being the more experienced veteran, will probably present bigger challenges to Ryan Bader. Ryan Bader's been doing this for a few years. He's the Ultimate Fighter Season 8 winner, but Rampage has been doing this for over a decade. Rampage has been doing this forever, ever since his fights in Pride and obviously winning the title in the UFC. You know, he's more experienced. He's been a champion. He knows what it's like to go 5 rounds. Ryan Bader has never done that. I think Rampage, with the experience and those things counted, will probably be better. He has good wrestling. So does Bader. If Bader was smart, he'd probably want to take it to the ground. But I think Rampage showed good takedown defense against Matt Hamill. And I think, if anything, he want to keep it on the feet. Rampage is trying to look for a knockout, especially in Japan, because he's such a hero in Japan because of Pride. Everyone loves him over there. So Rampage is looking at this. He's motivated extra for this fight, and I think he's going to try to put on a big show for the Japanese fans. How do you think this is going to go down?
Yeah, you know, Quinton Rampage Jackson definitely is the more experienced fighter. He's sporting a record of 32-9. And yeah, he's got a bunch of great fights in Pride back in Japan. He was really excited to go, pushing Dana White to get him on the card. Ryan Bader is still relatively green. He's got a record of 13-2. Ryan Bader is a Division I wrestler, you know, All-American. Quinton Rampage Jackson, though, does train with the Wolf Slayers. Got a lot of really good guys in there that he trains with, you know. So I really do think this one's going to go Quinton's way. You know, Rampage, I think, is going to come out with the W on this one. And the odds makers do agree. Actually, I'm showing that Quinton Rampage Jackson right now is -225. Ryan Bader is a +175, which pretty much puts Rampage Jackson at about a 2-1 favorite in the odds makers' opinion. So that's an interesting one right there. Now, for the main event of the evening, for the lightweight championship of the world, we have Frankie the Answer Edgar, who Dana White does consider the #2 pound-for-pound fighter in the world, just saying, taking on former WEC champion Ben Smooth Henderson. Geoff, how do you see this one going down?
Well, Eric, to me, this fight is a true title unification. You obviously have the undisputed champion in Frankie Edgar, who has the heart of a lion, versus Benson Henderson, who is the former WEC lightweight champion. He lost his title to Anthony Pettis at WEC 53. Since that fight, he joined the UFC and has been tearing through everyone in the lightweight division. Starting off, he destroyed Mark Bocek, who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He destroyed Jim Miller. And he went to war with Clay Guida and came out on top, came out the superior athlete, and showed how good he is and showed that he is the #1 contender for the 155-pound title. This fight is absolutely going to be a war. Frankie Edgar, as I just mentioned, has the heart of a lion. He's had many times where Frankie Edgar was the underdog, where he fought BJ Penn, 5-1 underdog, and he destroyed BJ 2 times and took the belt, defended the belt, had a war with Gray Maynard, went to a draw, and then fought Gray Maynard a 3rd time and beat Gray Maynard, knocked him out. No one's ever done that, and Gray Maynard was undefeated. So, I mean, this shows that Frankie Edgar can not only battle adversity whenever it comes, but he can come out on top. And so I think this fight is very exciting. Ben Henderson's obviously the bigger fighter. He's a bit taller, maybe has a reach advantage. But just look at Ben Henderson's size compared to Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar probably walks around at 160. Ben Henderson probably walks around at 175. He has to do a big weight cut to get to 155. He's a bigger, stronger guy. He's got great wrestling. Frankie's got great wrestling too, though. This fight is going to be amazing. But I think Frankie, with his speed, will probably be able to outlast Ben Henderson. Obviously, they can both go 5 rounds. They got great cardio. But I think Frankie Edgar has speed on his side, and he's going to be able to outlast and probably move around and pick his shots wisely and probably get a decision over Benson Henderson. How do you see that going down?
Yeah, you know, they're both really close records. I mean, Frankie the Answer Edgar's 14-1-1. And Ben Smooth Henderson's 15-2. You know, that is a big thing with Ben Henderson, is that he does have that 5-round experience in the WEC, being the champion there. One thing, as you said, you know, Ben Henderson is 5'9", whereas Frankie the Answer Edgar is 5'6". Henderson is going to have a slight reach advantage. The only thing, of course, most people are looking at is that Frankie the Answer Edgar, his speed is just on point. He's quick. And whereas Ben Smooth Henderson, he's a little slower. He is a southpaw, but unfortunately he doesn't utilize his striking, and he's not as fast as Frankie is. So a lot of people do believe Ben Henderson's main objective is going to be to try to get Frankie down and try to ground and pound him or submit him. And the odds makers really do pretty much agree on this one. I mean, they do have Frankie Edgar as a slight favorite, really not that big. He's -135, whereas Ben Henderson right now is looking at +105. So they're really only giving Frankie Edgar a slight advantage in this one. So it should make to be an interesting fight.
If I was Frankie Edgar, I'd rather have a slight advantage than be an underdog every time. I mean, this dude is the champion, and he's defended his title multiple times. I don't like the fact that people keep counting out Frankie Edgar. He obviously is where he's at for a reason. He's top dog for sure, and we know that he's just, if anything, Ben Henderson would probably probably want to keep it close to the point where he wants to push Frankie against the fence, maybe beat him up with knees and in the clinch, probably take him down. But Frankie's just so quick, man. I don't know if he's even going to get his hands on him. But I think this fight's going to be absolutely insane. And believe it or not, this fight is happening the day our first episode of What's Going Down in MMA aired.
Nice.
So that's pretty awesome.
Very awesome. Anyway, guys, that's our prediction. Be on the lookout for that one. Should be an awesome, awesome night of fights. Be sure to catch those prelims, too. I mean, lately they've all been just amazing. Anyway, of course, Eric and Geoff with you as always. You guys stay cool. Peace out. Later.